Welcome back to the MovieBabble Podcast. This week you have myself, Collin, and I'm joined by Nick as we break down the opening weekend for Abominable and Judy, as well as some of the controversy surrounding Joker and The Irishman. Remember, you can check us out, as always, at MovieBabbleReviews.com. Alright, so breaking down this week's top 5, we've got Abominable opening up at $20.85 million, followed by Downton Abbey in the number 2 spot with $14.5 million. Hustlers is in the number 3 spot with $11.4 million, followed by It Chapter 2 in the number 4 spot with $10.4 million, and Ad Astra in the number 5 spot at $10.14 million, so not too far behind It Chapter 2. But Abominable is the winner of the weekend. Not necessarily a massive gross. Actually, pretty dismal considering its budget is estimated around $75 million. So as a studio, you want to be at more than $30 million after your opening weekend worldwide. That is again $20.8 million domestic. So I feel like this movie wasn't marketed just a ton. So they, probably saved on marketing, but also aren't getting much in the way of returns for that. And it's about the Abominable Snowman. It is definitely kind of an odd movie for September. The trailers make it seem much more like kind of a Christmas time release or just winter time in general. And it's just kind of an odd premise. I'm really not surprised it's not taking anything by storm.
Yeah, the end of September is a very odd time in movie releasing, so I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole when doing research on Abominable, and it's weird because every single year since 2012 there has been a late September animated release, which is just very bizarre to me. So last year we had Smallfoot on September 28th. Before that was Lego Ninjago on 22nd. And 2016 was Storks on the 23rd. The year before that, Hotel Transylvania, 25th, and The Box Trolls the year before that in 2014. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 2013. First Hotel Transylvania in 2012. And then the year before that, was the year that breaks it, is 2011. We had Dolphin Tale, which is still kind of like a family fare. And we also had Lion King 3D release on the 16th of that year. But yeah, September is a very, very weird month because it kind of acts like a little like January or February. It's kind of a buffer zone because we see it every year where there's a big marquee, big time, either prestige or maybe superhero or comic book release that comes out at the beginning of October, and we're seeing that again with Joker. We had Venom and A Star Is Born come out last year in the first week of October, and it's just one of those zones. It's like, all right, we have all these movies that we're going to try to push for awards that are coming out later this year. So it's like, all right, how do we kind of budget our marketing? So I guess the rationale is there that, hey, there's animated movie kind of has a built-in audience. I mean, when you buy one ticket, you're basically buying two, considering kids and parents at the very least. So, I guess it makes sense from that perspective. And obviously all of Hollywood's doing that because it's been a trend for this long, but yeah, it's still not a very good start for Abominable. I'm sure it'll have reasonable legs because, well, even then it has Addams Family coming out in a few weeks, so that's maybe not. So yeah, it's kind of a weird one. It's pretty well received, so maybe, I don't know, maybe there's decent drops week to week, but yeah, this isn't a very good start for this movie.
Yeah, and it is. So it's a DreamWorks movie, but it's not fully produced by DreamWorks. They had Pearl Studio in on this one as well. But it's honestly kind of just a weird follow-up to How to Train Your Dragon. And DreamWorks has kind of struggled to really stick any franchises other than Shrek. And actually Madagascar has been pretty decent success. Not nearly as big as Shrek, but they've really struggled to find some tent poles. And so we've seen quite a bit of just odd movies from them, and Abominable is just kind of the latest line of DreamWorks, please watch this movies.
Yeah, you're really right. What was the last DreamWorks movie? It
It
was
was
other
How to
other
Train Your
than
Dragon,
yeah, other
and
than
then
Trader Dragon was like the Boss Baby, I think.
Captain Underpants.
Yeah, which I actually kind of like Captain Underpants, but it's really true because they've been they really have been kind of struggling to figure out what's their next big thing. So they've come out with all these just really bizarre and kind of just crazy just premises, and you even have trolls in there too. And I think there's a troll sequel coming out next year, and it's just like it's like Trolls World Tour, I think is the name of that movie, where it's just awful music for an hour and a half. So look forward to that, I guess. But yeah, they're kind of in this weird zone where they're trying to create their own IP, which is probably a little easier to do so than in live action. But yeah, they're not quite sticking the landing. I mean, obviously it's DreamWorks. They're not for now. They're not going anywhere, and The Boss Baby was actually really, really profitable for them. But yeah, we haven't had a crazy good hit from them in quite some time.
Yeah, and even going back, Captain Underpants was like 15 years too late. I mean, those
It's so true.
those books were popular when I was in kindergarten, and that was in 2002. Um, so it just feels really odd. And even Trolls was kind of a dated property to make a movie of in 2016, and I mean, it did all right, and it got a sequel, but they've just had some weird movies coming out, and even with the later Shreks, they've just been kind of missing the magic they had with Shrek and with Shrek 2, and every now and then they'll come out with a culturally impactful movie like B Movie, but overall it's kind of a rough go, which is funny because other than Pixar, they're probably the biggest animation studio that puts out films regularly, and so it's just odd to see their actual track record.
Yeah, it feels like Pixar and Disney have really kind of just taken over their territory, right? Because I even think when Captain Underpants came out, that was released the same weekend as Wonder Woman. So they've even had trouble kind of finding like planting their flags. Okay, we're going to release an untitled DreamWorks movie in 2021, and like you kind of see what you kind of see with other big time animation houses. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, yeah, they're doing okay, and all these they're getting sequels made and everything like that. But it's there. You can definitely feel the gears turning. It's not very fluid, and they're really trying new things all the time. So yeah, it's Abominable probably won't lead to much for them, but you never know. We have, I guess, look forward to Trolls 2 coming next year.
And I mean, the important thing to note with DreamWorks is they have a lot of movies that just kind of don't make an impact, but they don't necessarily have a lot of flops. So while they're not, getting these monster successes like Shrek 2, they do have, Kung Fu Panda 3 that pulled in a little over 500 million. Boss Baby did the same. How to Train Your Dragon did the same. And so they have these nice, steady movies that are there and make a decent amount of money and just churn out more sequels.
Yeah, and they also do a really good job of they have some TV animation as well and other properties, so they do a really good job there. So they're not going anywhere. They're fine.
Yeah. So we'll move on. And the number 2 spot was Downton Abbey, which did have a 53.3% drop, but is still just been a really solid success. I mean, it's just a testament to how big of a fan base this TV show turned movie has. It's already at 107 and some change worldwide, 107 million, and it's just people love this. I mean, like it's got a very dedicated fan base, and they're showing up to the theater for it.
Yeah, it's already Focus Features' fifth highest grossing movie of all time domestically, and it'll pass a lot of those movies probably next week. It's sitting right around 58.5 domestically, and we have Burn After Reading at 60, and London Has Fallen at 62, and Coraline at 75, and the highest of all time is Brokeback Mountain with 83. So who knows? Maybe over the course of next week and over the weekend, it might be get close to that Brokeback Mountain number. But yeah, really good job by Downton Abbey so far. Just this fan base is crazy. It just feels like if you've watched the show, you really really like it. I don't really see any dissenters against Downton Abbey out there. But so it's that 53% drop isn't great, but it kind of makes sense because you figure it's a continuation of the TV show. So you figure all the fans are going out opening weekend, and anyone who hasn't watched the show, like myself, you're not super jazzed to go out and see this movie. So it would kind of make sense that all the fans go see it, and then the the second weekend drop is a little more steep. That makes a little sense there. But yeah, you can't really be mad at all. This movie is doing killer business for Focus Features. Yeah, it's just you really can't complain whatsoever here.
Yeah, and I've seen estimates on its budget from anywhere from 13 to 20 million, which is still pretty small overall, especially considering just how big this cast is. So it's definitely a cheap movie to get made, and they've more than made back their budget. It's just been a nice little hit. So don't be surprised if Downton Abbey returns again in 5-10 years.
Yeah, well, they've Focus Features. We've ever since the movie release, they've kind of been hinting that there might be another movie in the works. And that would be really smart for them, considering this is one of their best hits of all time. So I guess strike while the iron's hot there. And yeah, and it makes sense. This movie is mostly in a house. It's a very ornate house, but the house nonetheless. So very, even with the cast, it's pretty easy to get shot and all that. And you have people in nice costumes just saying very British things, and people really like it. And good for them. We'll see how this movie progresses in the next few weeks, but I see this movie sticking around for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, my grandma's nursing home alone is probably keeping it open, so.
As are many other nursing homes around the country.
So we'll move on from Downton Abbey and talk about Hustlers, which only had a 31.8% drop and has just done phenomenal business. I think this is definitely one of the bigger surprise hits of the year, just in the fact that it's kind of made more money and stayed a little bit more consistent than anybody really thought it would. Nobody really knew where to peg this movie or what this movie was until it came out, and it's just almost at 100 million worldwide, and it's just doing really good business. Like it's making more money than anyone thought it would.
Yeah, so it's already the third highest movie in the history of STX Entertainment after 17 days, which is pretty crazy. And it's so the highest grossing movie domestically all time for STX was Bad Moms, which obviously was a really big deal for them, and they had a Bad Moms Christmas come out soon after. And it's already outpacing that movie. So after 17 days, Bad Moms was at 71 million, and Hustlers is at 80. So it's doing a really good job, and it's very much poised to become the highest grossing movie for STX. Because I mean, we've kind of seen it. Looks like Jennifer Lopez is really going to campaign hard for that Best Supporting Actress nomination. News broke that she's going to be performing at the Super Bowl, which is going to occur when Oscars voting is still open. So that's one of the biggest power plays I've ever seen. Just throw aside kissing babies and just go host the halftime show of the Super Bowl, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, this movie is going to stick around for quite some time in theaters. I mean, it's obviously 32% drop this week is just really great. It's hardly left any theaters. Only left 17 theaters this past week. So yeah, compared with that, and Jennifer Lopez is going to keep this movie on the forefront of our minds for quite some time. I feel like this is only the beginning. We're going to see this movie just stick around for forever and kind of pepper in those $7 and $6 million weekends and just do really well. I could see this movie even pushing 150 million here in the U.S. When you consider re-releases and everything in Oscar time. So yeah, this is a really good start. I don't see this stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, and it's already passed the domestic total for The Big Short, which is, until this point, kind of been the biggest movie about the stock market crash of '08. So this is arguably the greatest financial stock market movie of our time, which nobody really claimed it was before. And then, so that's Hustlers, and we'll move on to It Chapter 2, which is again at the number 4 spot, with a little over 10.4 million, and I mean it's making decent money. Only had a 38% drop, which horror movies you typically have really big drops in the beginning, and It Chapter 2 has faced that, but it's still stayed pretty steady. It's not pulling quite the numbers that It Chapter 1 did, but it's more than made money and has been decently profitable.
Yeah, and it's one really interesting thing to note here is we don't really have a big-time horror movie coming out in October, which is just very bizarre. I mean, we have Maleficent and Zombieland 2 coming out October 18th, but those aren't exactly what you would call like a classic horror movie in the vein of like a Conjuring or just a very fun scare thrill ride. So there's really nothing like that. Maybe The Lighthouse for us artsy fartsy people out there will be something of interest. But yeah, Chapter 2 kind of has free reign in terms of horror movies for the entire month of October. So as we kind of get into the scary time of year and people get more excited about horror and start watching more in general, and Halloween comes, I think Chapter 2 is really going to stay around for quite some time. So yeah, it dropped really solidly, 39% this past week, which is just great considering almost a 3-hour movie. It's definitely not going to get close to the grosses of the first It movie. I mean, we've kind of talked about this a lot the past few weeks, but yeah, I think the legs are going to be a lot stronger than we once thought of here because there's just really no competition for this. I mean, you have maybe The Addams Family, which is kind of horror, but not really. It's a kids movie. It's just kind of silly and it has that little fun, macabre little skin to it. So yeah, there's really nothing in its way. So they're just like Hustlers. I imagine this movie is going to probably just keep peppering those $6 to $7 million intakes for quite some time.
Yeah, I think on a much more scaled back sense of things, we're going to see this perform kind of similar to like the Lion King or Aladdin, just in the fact that it's just kind of consistently pulling in money. You don't necessarily hear anything major about it after the first couple of weeks, but it's always there, lurking in the shadows, just like Pennywise.
There you go. And I guess I don't really like either of those movies, Lion King or Aladdin or Chapter 2, but I feel like this is a lot more palatable to discuss week over week because I'm still not over the fact that we had to talk about The Lion King for like 10 weeks. Just haunted my dreams.
Yeah, I certainly don't see it staying in the top 5 as long, but I think it'll be hanging around the top 10 for quite some time.
Absolutely, I agree.
And so with that, we'll move to the number 5 spot, which is Ad Astra, which pulled in a little over 10.1 million this weekend at the box office. And, this wasn't something that was ever going to be a huge hit. It was one of the big question mark movies last week, just seeing where it would land with everything else at the box office. It's currently sitting at about a little over 89 million worldwide. And it seems to be a pretty divisive movie from what I've seen. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really sincere, just heartfelt father-son story, and it isn't afraid to really get grim with its concept. But I know a lot of audiences haven't seen eye to eye on that, and I think just kind of that mixed reaction is what's slowing it down a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Brett and I had touched on this last week. It's just a bummer of a movie. Like there's a little tinge of hope there at the end of this, and I obviously won't get into spoilers or anything like that there, but it's just kind of a bummer, and it's the sad pit memes and the sad Astra and Dad Astra tweets have just been all over the place, and yeah, it's just not. It's kind of an art house movie made on an $80 million budget, just really thoughtful and meditative. So I kind of saw this kind of iffy start to the box office happen. I saw that kind of from the start when they started the promotional material, but it's doing fine. I mean, so if the budget on this movie has been projected around 80 million ish, so 89, it's made its production budget back. Obviously, marketing and promotional material and all that definitely has a lot more to do, but it's not going to be this crazy bad just disaster for Fox. I'm sure Disney isn't thrilled with it because we've seen them kind of be angry with Fox and how their films have done since the merger went through. So this definitely won't help there, and it's also kind of wrapped up in terms of its release around the world. I mean, we have a few coming up this week, but they're not huge. It's just has countries like Italy, Russia, and Brazil kind of still waiting. Even those I think have already passed if I can remember correctly. But yeah, I think this movie is probably gonna slow down. Might just trickle in a couple do decent money next week. It'll definitely be out of the top 5. But yeah, it's doing fine. I think this movie would have been. I think Brad Pitt especially would have been positioned for Oscars with his lead performance in this movie if it was just better received by the general public and made more money. But it looks like that won't happen. It's it's doing fine, but it's really nothing to write home about in either negatively or positively.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of what it is at this point.
Yeah, really.
So we'll move on, and we did have one other sort of wide release. So it was a limited wide release, and that was Judy, which is the Judy Garland biopic, which of course is about Judy Garland, played by Renee Zellweger. And this is another one that I've heard pretty mixed reviews. I'd say they've started to lean a little bit more to the negative side. I'm still excited to see it because, I mean, Judy Garland's iconic, and I mean, why not? But it pulled in a little over 3 million this week and was only in about 460-ish theaters domestically. So it's certainly not going to be a huge opening, but as it expands, it might gross a little more. I don't see it being a huge success in any sense.
Yeah, so out of all the movies in the top 10, it actually had the best per screen average at a little over $6,700 per screen. So it's doing well there. And I think, like you said, I think this movie it's not going to do incredible business, but it'll do pretty solid because it seems this is a very much like an Oscar baity, Renee Zellweger, if I can speak, for Best Actress award, and they're going to push that hard there, and it seems like that's probably the only category it'll contend in. But they're going to try to keep this movie in theaters for quite some time, and it's actually expanding into more theaters next week. So this kind of feels like a really good old person movie. It's not going to be, from what I've heard, it's not too strong, not too hard R or anything like that. It's a biopic about a beloved old Hollywood figure. So just a lot of good, comfortable feelings there. Like you said, it kind of just sounds like it's the typical biopic, like good impression, pretty average to below average movie. So that doesn't really get me excited as well, but it's definitely something to watch because it seems like Renee Zellweger is really pushing hard to get a nomination and maybe even a win. And for what it seems like in the trades and everyone kind of talking in and around Hollywood, it kind of seems like she's at the front of the pack so far because it doesn't really look like the Best Actress category is going to be too strong this year. So, I mean, in that sense, I think Judy will be around for quite some time.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I mean, I completely agree with it being an older person movie. The Wizard of Oz is a little dated. And so is Judy Garland. But I think it's definitely going to hit with its target audience. And I think that's what we're starting to see now, and we'll see more of just as it continues to expand.
Yeah, I agree there. And just one final note here. It kind of just confirms what our beliefs are. So 79% of people that went to see this movie on opening day were 35 years old or older. So there you go. This is the old person Oscar baity kind of beginning of the Oscar season movie. So that's exactly what it is.
This is a movie for the elderly. You're welcome.
They should put that on the poster.
I'll still see it, but... So that kind of wraps up what's going on this week, but we are getting into some pretty dicey couple of weeks, pretty crowded couple of weeks. We've got a few films we want to talk about just in regard to that. So we're going to start off with next week. We have the highly anticipated or highly not anticipated Joker, depending on how you look at it. We just wanted to kind of dive into some of the controversy surrounding it and just offer some opinions on why this movie has been such a big deal, despite the fact that literally none of the world has seen it at this point. But if you hop on Twitter, everyone has opinions about it, which has been kind of exhausting, honestly.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that one. It is weird because we have touched on this. We've kind of been watching it for a few weeks now. I think the Venice Film Festival was kind of like the big marker of this is going to turn into something in terms of a conversation point when it won the Golden Lion and Roman Polanski's movie came in second. It was just a very bizarre turn of events. And ever since, it feels like it's kind of kicked into high gear. It's at one point you can understand it because people are kind of talking about, hey, it's this gritty crime drama, and do we really need a movie about an angry man kind of taking it to the streets and kind of inciting violence? But It is kind of weird because we've talked about this many times, right? Like aside from a select like handful of critics, no one else has seen this movie. So I've, it's kind of it's frustrating to me because I would like to be able to see a movie and then talk about its merits or lack thereof afterwards. But it kind of feels like we're already deciding how we feel about this movie before it comes out. And that's not to say that I think everyone's stupid or like, oh, like Joker's gonna be the greatest thing ever. That's just silly, and I would sound like I'm an incel on Twitter if I said that. So it's just would like to love to withhold judgment until we actually see this, which will be next week, and then we can dive into it and really pick out what's on its mind.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it is the fact that Joker is already pretty well known. Like everyone kind of understands what's going to happen. Like it's not going to be a huge twist when Arthur becomes the bad guy and starts destroying Gotham City. But one thing that I've really noticed is just Todd Phillips, the director, has really just took a headfirst dive into the mess. The comment that keeps getting brought up is he's like, well, no one's talking about John Wick. Like, I mean, you and I have praised John Wick endlessly for just every way he kills people in that movie. And the thing that I don't think he really understands and what film Twitter sort of understands but also really doesn't understand is just the distinction between those two. So like when you go to see John Wick, the message isn't like, oh, this guy gets angry and decides to shoot people. It's like, no, this guy's an assassin, like he lives in the world and he kills people because that's what he does. But with Joker, I think more of the issue is just the character itself. And you're like, yeah, society hurts this guy, so this guy's like, I'm going to destroy society. And I think it's just a little bit of a troubling message, even if the film is good or bad. Like it's an odd message that's kind of being put out into the universe right now, and especially in America, that's kind of a hot button issue.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, just to add on there, John Wick is very hyper stylized, and going in that it's not really a reflection at all of the real world. It's just kind of escapist, just shoot 'em up, just great stunt work, just very well produced and everything like that. Whereas Joker, and it's really interesting because this is kind of one of the things that made me really fascinated in it. It's taking IP that we know and have loved before and kind of putting a real world tint on it and kind of telling a really nihilistic story. And from what it seems like, the movie just kind of looks to have like a really bad view of society, which I think is somewhat interesting if done correctly. And we've kind of seen this done many times before. And I mean, a lot of the jumping off points for this movie are obviously Taxi Driver or King Comedy or any really dark, gritty crime drama of like the 70s and 80s. So at that point, it's just a different beast. I mean, yes, they're both R-rated. That's kind of as far as the comparison should go, in my estimation. So from that point, yeah, it's just entirely different. I really just do not see any type of just strong comparison point there. I really agree. It's just Todd Phillips just isn't doing himself any favors there, and it kind of feels like he was trying to just set himself apart. I mean, he's come out before and said like comic book fans are going to be angry at this movie because we literally just didn't care about the source material and we just wanted to make our own movie. So in that case, that's why another reason why there's just so many more eyes in this movie, because it's a comic book movie, and it's really funny. Like, I hate to get cynical on my own here, but there's so many other of these just really dark and just really depressing and cynical crime movies that are released all the time that I'm sure film Twitter and people would freak out about if they went and saw them. But this movie is obviously just going to have so many more eyes on it, and it's going to make so much more money that it's just a different beast entirely. So I'm really interested to kind of see what the overall discussion about this is, because we've seen petitions to get people to not release the film next week. I mean, which happens a lot, but it seems like it's kind of up another level this time. So yeah, it's just messy no matter where you look.
Yeah, and my other favorite trend with Joker is the sudden obsession that all the Joker fans have for King of Comedy, which was a complete flop back in the day, which doesn't really have anything to say with the quality of the movie, just its actual impact and awareness of it. And then literally as soon as Todd Phillips mentioned that, hey, this movie like kind of pays homage to King of Comedy, and this is why De Niro's on board. Just DC Twitter erupted with love for this movie they'd never seen or heard of until that moment.
Yeah, it's really funny how we see that happen, right? But yeah, it's hey, King of Comedy is probably one of my favorite movies. I freaking love that thing. It's really awesome, and I watch it from time to time, even though it's incredibly twisted. But I feel like for a lot of us, that just kind of seems like all right, dude, like cool. You're comparing your movie to one of like an all-time classic, like sweet, like I see what you did there. But it's Joker is just kind of a weird thing. I mean, as much as we're talking about it now, like I really want to hold off entirely until we've seen it and we can really dissect what it's saying. And maybe it's not the worst. Maybe it's just kind of, who knows? Maybe it's just about one random dude who got angry. Maybe it doesn't have any bigger ramifications than that. I don't know. It is really frustrating when we kind of see film Twitter and just Twitter in general, or just in the news, we kind of see an outrage about this. I don't think this would have happened maybe 10 years ago or something like that. It's a strange time we live in, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm definitely excited for it. I will be there Thursday night, and I don't want to pass judgment on it till then, but it's just a big movie to talk about at this point in time.
Yeah, and it's going to be one of those things where I think it seems like Joaquin is probably the front runner at this point in the Oscar race. I mean, we are in September as we talk about this, so clearly that's subject to change. But it seems like this movie is going to be positioned very strongly for the Oscar season. Warner Brothers is going to put a lot of money behind it. So, I mean, we'll see. This movie's going to be around for a while. And I'm praying, crossing my fingers that people just take it for what it is and talk about it from there. And if it has societal issues, we can talk about it in due course. But it's just, yeah, I'm feeling the train of just slop of Twitter, just hate and all this stuff happening. So next week we will have seen the film and we will be able to comment further. But it's just, it is just very silly to see all this happening. Let's all relax a little bit, guys. I love all of you, and I hope you continue to listen to this pod. But let's relax.
Yeah, so that is Joker. And we'll talk about another movie featuring Robert De Niro as well, which is The Irishman, which is Scorsese's just monster budget Netflix film with De Niro and Pacino and Joe Pesci, and they recently pulled the runtime down from 210 minutes to 209 minutes. So that's been a big deal this week, but it's getting a lot of buzz, and it's an event. I mean, like, these collaborators are famous for working with each other independently, and now that literally all of Scorsese's people are there in one place, like, there's no way this movie wasn't going to be buzzy from the start.
Yeah, so I want to do a little bit of a comparison here. So, Rotten Tomatoes, we've talked about it many times. It should never be your barometer of what's good or not. It's a fun tool to use, but it never should be the end-all be-all. But right now, The Irishman's sitting at 100% after 43 reviews, which doesn't mean a lot. But I like to look at, when I use Rotten Tomatoes, I like to use the average rating, which is what the average critic rates it. And so at all critics, it's at an 8.97. And I want to compare that to Goodfellas, which is sitting at a 9 out of 10 on the tomato meter. And with top critics, it's 8.58 for The Irishman, and it's 8.53 for Goodfellas. So we're still very early in this process, but this is really good buzz for this movie, and this is kind of exactly what Netflix needed. I feel like we kind of penned this movie as kind of like the biggest high variance play of the year. Like, with all the de-aging technology used in this and just the ballooning budget. And Netflix has a pretty spotty track record with their original films. So I think we were all just very curious, but we were not diving headfirst into the deep end of this movie. But it seems like now it's okay to do that. 100% is just a really solid, and I think obviously that's not the end all be all, as I mentioned before, but it does point to a lot of just great stuff in there, and it seems like everyone is praising Al Pacino as Jimmy Hoffa, which is it just warms my heart. It's just really cool to see these aging stars have a really just meaty role to work with and just show everyone how great they are still when they give them the opportunity. And everyone kind of says the same thing for Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci as well. So this just gets me excited. And I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be fun. It'll be a fun little experiment as well, because it's obviously 209 minutes. So it's on Netflix. So I wonder if it's divided up at all, and you can kind of maybe in the chapters, and you can kind of play it as like a little mini series. I think this is a really fascinating experiment for Netflix, and I'm really interested to see how the Academy takes it, because they've obviously, with Roma last year and the whole Green Book thing, they are not one to praise Netflix when the opportunity strikes. So it's very, very fascinating.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and it's just an insane cast. So I mean, besides the big three, you've got Bobby Cannavale, Harvey Keitel's in it, Anna Paquin's in it, Ray Romano is in it, Jesse Plemons. Like, it's just a completely loaded cast overall. And I cannot wait just to see all of them playing off each other in action.
Yeah, it's just so cool just every time Scorsese comes out with a movie now, because I mean, it's getting up there. You don't know when he's going to stop or when he decides to take a break or whatever. So it's really cool, and I loved Silence, which came out a few years ago. His last movie, which is very much long in development movie, which went through a lot of troubles, but it's kind of the same thing as The Irishman, where it was just in the works for so long. It had a lot of stops and starts, but it seems like both movies are turning out very solidly. Silence was one of my favorite movies of 2016, and I'm hoping this is the same. Like, again, I'm not going to jump to conclusions, because I'm not going to be a hypocrite with our Joker conversation. So I'm going to see what happens when this movie comes out. But really interesting signs, and I really just can't wait to see some of our greats get another stab at it. It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, it is definitely one to watch, and I mean, it's a great way to wrap up a busy month, because it releases first day of November, I believe, on Netflix, and it wraps up what is looking to be a pretty crowded October. So I mean, we have Joker next week, we've got The Addams Family and Zombieland and Jojo Rabbit, and just all these movies that are really going to be hitting here one after the other in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I believe that's the November 1st date is the start of its theatrical run, and then I think it goes to Netflix a few weeks after. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's really we're starting. It is September, and maybe sometimes it feels like it's a little premature to start talking about Oscar things, but we're about to hit a gauntlet of movies, and just things will come out every single week with hopefuls, and some will flop hard, some will kind of rise to the occasion, some will just kind of be sleepers and hang around for a while. So yeah, November is going to be a really big time too, and the week after that is another big time Netflix movie, Marriage Story, which is primed to also be a really big hit for Oscar season. We have Ford v Ferrari in there, and Arctic Dogs. The big time is the big time movie of the fall season, which should be great. Really looking forward to that one. The Renaissance continues. His app flopped, but we have Arctic Dogs now. I can't wait for that. But yeah, in all seriousness, this is when movies get really fun, and I can't wait, because we're gonna have a lot to talk about every single week. It's gonna be really cool.
Yeah, like we're getting into just a bunch of packed weekends, which is great. Lots to see, lots to do, and we'll be here talking about it. Thanks for listening to this episode of the MovieBabble Podcast. Again, you can always check us out online at moviebabblereviews.com.